Hi, I'm Rocket with Wreckless Blenders, and welcome to Musings from Rocket Cellars. In today's session, I'm going to talk a little bit about acidity, and I'm going to do a little bit of a taste test with some of our more recent wines that I thought were expressive of acidity, but actually I think they're more expressive of tannins. Let's get started. So here's the thing. I was thinking about acidity the other day for some weird reason. I was on Instagram and I was scrolling through as one does, and I saw Madeline Puck, who is a fantastic person in the wine industry. She does a lot of great things, and her Instagram things are wonderful. She does these little short videos that talk about different characteristics of wine and has these amazing photos, and just a wonderful, wonderful person to follow. Now, I tend to, like a lot of people do with Instagram, just, I see something interesting, I pause, I watch it for a second, and I keep scrolling. I haven't double clicked and gone and done, huge amounts of research on some of the things she's talked about. But in this one time I was scrolling by and I saw this thing that came up and said, well, if you want to understand acidity, take a bite out of a lemon. And what I thought she meant, and I don't think this is what she meant, I thought, well, maybe you take a bite out of a lemon and then you take a drink of the wine. No. That's not what she meant. So the interesting thing about acidity, okay, so there's like 4 different types of acidity that show up in wine. There's tartaric, there is malic, citrus, and lactic. All right, you high school chemistry, you probably understand what those are in general terms. It always requires a refresher on my part. It's just one of those things that pops right out of my head. Same thing with the pH scale. I'm getting it now, I'm getting a little bit more, but I tend to have to relearn things, and that's a particular one I have to. But if you take the acid in your stomach, which is incredibly acidic, it's got a pH of 1. And you take water, that is a pH of 7. All right? So you get that idea. Now the lower the number, the more acid is in it, right? Wine tends to be in the 3-ish area, and you get variation based on white wine. White wines tend to have a bit more acid due to youth and other reasons than the red wines, because the red wines tend to have the acid taken out during the fermentation process when they connect with the skins and the seeds and everything. Some of that acid gets taken out. Malic is, when you think of malic acid, it's got an appley taste. So some of your Sauvignon Blancs that have that appley taste, that often comes from malic acid. Citrus, not a lot out there citrus-wise in wine, not naturally. Some winemakers may add it. I don't know why. It's incredibly potent, and maybe they're looking for some brightness, but we'll back off of that. Then there's lactic, and lactic tends to be the buttery and the creamy. And so when you get more lactic acid, that's that, buttery Chardonnays, they tend to have a bit more of that. Now, it gets really interesting when you have to measure acid. We go for particular measurements for our acid in our wines. And it just has to do with starting with a known location when it comes to the winemaking process. And it definitely makes a big difference early on, because it's, doing unnatural things to the wine later is something we are very much against. So if we're going to do something, we're going to make small adjustments early and then let the process stay natural the rest of the way. I had the 2019 Barbera late last year, and I don't think I've made any, I haven't been super loud about it, but I haven't been quiet about it either. The 2019 Barbera hasn't been, it didn't feel ready to me. It hasn't tasted ready to me. Recently, it started tasting ready. And I thought it was because it had too much acid. And we were tasting one day, I think it was probably one of the wine days, And I tasted it, man, it's just got a lot of acid. And JT immediately goes, no, that's tannins. I went, what? Now, I trust JT implicitly on this. And so I just took it away and I said, well, I need to understand what this means. And this is, in these kind of convergence of moments happened is that, fast forward a month later and I'm scrolling through Instagram and I see this thing from Madeline Puck say, bite into a lemon. So I thought I'd do that. I thought I'd bite into a lemon and talk about what I'm feeling. I don't think she meant to bite into a lemon and then take a sip of wine. I think she meant bite into a lemon and then see what the reaction is in your mouth. And I actually heard somebody tell me the other day that if you do that, if you even just think about biting into a lemon, you're going to get a lot of the same reactions, right? And if you're doing it right now, your mouth is probably watering. You get a little bit of clench on your muscles and your jaw, right? So yeah, I noticed that. These are some Meyer lemons that from my sister, the amazing nature photographer. You should definitely check out her Instagram. Her pictures just blow me away. And yeah, here's a few of them right here. I just can't, I'm beside myself when, how does she get these pictures? And she just does amazing, amazing work. Definitely worth checking her stuff out. Anyway, she brought a bunch of lemons one day and I thought I'd take it. Meyer lemon's got a little bit, it's a little more approachable if I'm going to eat it. So let's go. Let's try this out. Okay. Here's what's happening. It's all at the front of my mouth. Okay. All the acidity is showing up here. The salivating, mouth watering. That is different, I think, than tannins. I believe, and I'm pretty sure about this, tannins show up in the back of the mouth. And so I'm really, well, that's pretty interesting. I am going to try a Barbera right now. Now I've got both a Barbera and a Touriga and out here. And oh, check this out. I think you'll find this fun. So the advent calendars, have you seen these? The 24 bottles of wine you get at either Costco or some different stores. And they're all these different varietals and from different locations. Well, they're not all the same, by the way. We learned this when Miss Rocket was at the store and she saw this advent of wine thing and she's like, oh my gosh, it's only 20 bucks. It's normally 80, 85. I'm getting it, right? And we bring it home and it turned out to be a bunch of what looks like wine purchased in bulk and then rebottled and given fun names. And it's kind of what it looks like. It's all from the same location. There were 2 or 3 that were good. Most of them were like, yeah, okay. And after about the 3rd one of the reds that I tried, and I just kind of went, it's just not working. I said, well, I am a Wreckless Blender. Let's try this. And so I opened all of them and I tasted just a little bit of each. And unless there was one that just kind of blew me away, which they're not really, I then just dumped them all into a 1 liter, bottle splitter and shook it up and had a glass of that, or just a sip of it actually. And it was okay. It was like, okay, yeah, that's a Wreckless Blender thing to do. I'm definitely check out what you're getting before you buy it. The Costco ones have been fantastic. I know Jimbo and Miss Brown had one from Costco and we saw it and it was really, really good. But anyway, pay attention to it if you're going to invest more than 20 bucks. That was fine for 20 bucks, whatever. What was really cool is they came in these little bottles. And so now I have 24 new little bottles and they're plastic. Okay, so this is definitely not going to be long-term storage, but I thought, what the heck? And I went ahead and did blue tape on this because it's easier to remove. The glass and the really heavy, sticky gaffer tape is what I use on the other bottles. It's just a lot heavier. The blue tape's going to be just fine. Anyway, I thought I'd share that with you. It's a great source for little tiny bottles. All right. I've talked enough that my mouth has kind of settled down from that acid shot. Let's try the Barbera. Now remember the 3-sip rule, right? So 3 sips before you, and Okay. Barbera by nature, our Barbera by nature, and kind of the cornerstone Barberas of the world tend to have a brightness to them. So there's definitely acid in here. But a majority of what I was reacting to, sorry, I'm having a holy free holies, that's good moment. I was having this, it's definitely the tannins in this. There's more tannins in this Barbera than we normally see. And wow. Now the 3-sip rule, just a quick reminder, never judge a wine on the first sip. I'm getting a lot of the acidity up front here, but I'm also getting this nice, starting to get this nice round mouthfeel from the tannins. 3-sip, so the second sip is the kind of cleanses your palate, and the third sip is the actual wine. So don't eat anything in between. And if you like the wine on the first sip, yeah, you get 2 more sips. But it's that third sip that's really the essence of the wine. And it's just like anything that, you know, your parents may have told you as a youngster, or that you as a parent may have told your kids, you know, you have to have 3 bites to, you know, before you can say you don't like something. Very similar with wine. And that's a good rule of thumb for a lot of different things when it comes to food and wine, is to give it at least 3 sips and not have anything in between. You know, it's a sip, nibble, sip for chocolate and wine. But I always recommend, if you're doing a chocolate and wine thing, to have 3 sips of the wine first to make sure you understand what it is, then do nibble, sip, right? You know. So anyway, I'm off base. So the second sip on this, I really started feeling, and the third sip, okay. Yeah, there's a lot more tannins in this than I'm used to. And so that's probably what was throwing me. Now that I've kind of reoriented myself on what this is, it's definitely a good, oh, it's lovely. It's lovely. I think this could use a little bit more time. It's going to be fine now. If you're going to have some, make sure you open it and keep it open for an hour-ish before having it. Maybe decant it, or maybe throw it through one of the aerators. If you don't have an aerator, but you have like a container of some sort, you know, a pitcher, you can just dump the wine into that pitcher, and then you get your funnel, right? Of course you have a funnel, and you pour it back into the bottle, and that way it will aerate, and then you don't have to worry about, you know, losing serving something in a weird looking pitcher if that's all you've got. Little tip there. All right, so I'm happy with this Barbera. I'm happy, and I'm glad I'm understanding the difference between the acidity, that up front taste, and that kind of mouth-watery stuff, versus the tannins that this has got more of than I'm used to. Definitely pick some of that up. And at the next wine day, try it out. Okay, make sure it's up your alley. I used to serve in order of wines. I would often start with the Sangiovese, which is smooth and silky, and it's a great entry. It really warms your palate up. And then move on to a Barbera. Sometimes I'd put the rosé or the white in between, and people would be like, "What, you're supposed to do white first?" I'm like, "Hey, we're Wreckless. Come on." I like to have, especially the Fiano, the previous Fiano. The new one, I don't know. We'll have to see how this shows up. But the previous one had a bit more savory flavor to it. And so it was nice after you got your palate warmed up after the Sangiovese, you went to the Fiano, and it really helped highlight the different flavors in that Fiano, versus you start with the Fiano and it's good. It's a better, more interesting wine. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I would then move on to the Barbera. Now, often if you wanted to say what's the lightest or the brightest first, and then you work down to your heavier wines, people would put Barbera first. What I found was having the Barbera first, because it was so bright and very intense, it's a lovely, lovely varietal, it would overpower the Sangiovese, and the Sangiovese wouldn't taste as silky and smooth. That silky and smooth characteristics of that was got that lovely cherry and cola and these wonderful flavors in Sangiovese. It would just be like meh, right? So I flipped them, and it's been much better at the wine tastings. So try that, and it's fun to go back, right, and flip them around and see which one you like better first. So I've started moving this down further. So actually I've put the Barbera near the end just because of the tannins in this thing. Now they're not the angry, pissed off tannins. They're not the I'm having a bar fight in your mouth kind of tannins. They're just there, and it's not like a cab, one of those heavy duty, suck all the moisture out of your mouth cabs. It's just there's some texture to it. So it's an interesting thing on that Barbera. Now, the other thing I did was I thought, well, the Tourigas had similar characteristics with the Touriga, the 19 Touriga. So I'll take one more bite of lemon. Oh man, all these seeds. Let's see, here we go. I will say that the Meyer lemon it's got a softer flavor to it, and I like it. It's got it's not like I'm jumping up and down acidity. All right, so I'm going to try the Touriga. Now the Touriga, I've had this recently. Now it's a Portuguese grape, right? Touriga is the varietal, comes from Portugal originally. We get it from Shaker Ridge in El Dorado Hills, and we love it. All right, and this one was a very interesting year. It was a good year, and it has some characteristics that we weren't expecting. So it's a little lighter than normal. It's got savory flavors to it, but they're not as prominent as prior years. And let me give it a sip here real quick. Oh, that nose, right? It's got a little earthy nose. I got to take my hands away from the top of the glass because it's got lemon on them. Yeah. So this is more savory than it has been in last year, when I opened it last year. So it's getting some more roundness to the mouthfeel. It's definitely, I thought it was acidic, again, very much like the Barbera. I thought but it's more the tannins than it is the acidity. But it doesn't have much acidity at all in the mouth. Yep. And it's very prominent. So I'm getting all the flavors back here in the back of the mouth and mid palate all the way back versus up front. And that's a characteristic of Touriga that's pretty standard for Touriga, where you've got savory flavors, more earthen, mushroom, forest floor, saddle, these kinds of flavors come out of it. Boy, that's a really good, you check that out, because yeah. And we've got something special coming up this year when we bottle a rosé is coming, and it's going to be something like this. And I'll tell a whole other story if I haven't already told it about that when we release the rosé. But it's going to be a Touriga rosé, and fantastic. So yeah, more on that when it comes. Right. I hope this helped. I hope you learned something here. And, come by the wine days. First Saturday of the month is Concord. Last Saturday of the month is Carmichael at the winery. Check the website, see the emails because sometimes we have to miss one or we have to reschedule for various reasons. But generally speaking, plan on the first Saturday in Concord and the last Saturday in Carmichael. Right. With that, I'm Rocket. This has been another Musings from Rocket Cellar. This is Panda the hairy cat. The Panda wants to get a little loving right now, and I'm trying not to, because I had to spend like 10 minutes and it's still got hair on it, on this sweater. And so I've been ignoring him, and he is expressing his displeasure.